Morning, everyone. It's Tuesday, June 23rd. It's 8 a.m. 2026. Probably won't be reusing these videos, but anyways, just at least put it on there in case I do, so everybody understands it's an older video. Today's lab is nonlinear graphing 2. And it's actually been a while since I've been able to teach this one, so I'm just going to go over it, the document, and then show you the addendum, and make sure all the data is there. And you guys have, like always, a week from today to turn it in. It's actually a week from today at 11:59 p.m. I want to also remind you that you do have a test, a face-to-face test that's supposed to happen this week. Normally, it would be it's actually supposed to be at your lab on Thursday, I guess it is. I think you guys meet at lab on Thursday. It's either Thursday or Wednesday that you meet labs, and that was supposed to be the day that you're doing your lab final. I mean, your face-to-face test too. I set it up so that you have until the 28th to do it. So you now have all over the weekend instead of doing it with your lab instructor. I really wanted it to be with your lab instructor, but I'm sure he'll appreciate having the day off anyways. So let's just leave it at that. And remember, it has to be done with your Respondus lockdown browser. It has to be done with Respondus monitor, and you have to have follow the instructions in Respondus, which will tell you things like you're supposed to take your webcam and aim it all around the room, and then all while you're still doing that, you're supposed to show me your workspace, which is like your desktop and everything you can reach and stretch for from your desktop. So like down below your feet, down below the desk by your feet, over to the side and all this, and then you're going to have all your papers that you're using laid out on your desk. And while you still have that, you're going to take and show me the front and back of every one of those pages, and including any equation sheets you have, because you are allowed equation sheets, but they're not allowed to be different from the ones that I've given you. You can actually type up your own equation sheet if you wanted and put it in any order you want. But if I find that you have any equations beyond that or sentences beyond what's on the original one, then that's considered cheating. So make sure if you're going to use one, you have to show me the front and back of every page, because that's what you have to do for part of the testing procedure. And two, make sure you're only using the one that I approved or equivalent to the one that I approved, because otherwise, like I said, that's considered cheating. So make sure you do that. Once you're finished showing me all those documents front and back, then you can put their webcam back down so that it keeps an eye on you. You need to make sure that you're basically looking in the general direction of the webcam. I don't want to see a lot of people working down like this below something where we can't see. That's the whole purpose of the webcam, is to make sure that you're not using any other devices to look at. You're not looking at any notes or any computer or anything like that laying in your lap. So if I see a lot of behavior where it looks like you're looking at something other than the desk surface that we can look at and see, then I'm going to have to basically say that this test wasn't sufficient and you'll have to retake. So I don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. It's a waste of your time, and we don't have much time in the summer anyway, so make sure you don't do that. But you do have to get it done. Uh, I believe what I'm going to do is to give you a little bit more time. I'm only going to allow you to take it on Saturday or Sunday, but those are the 2 days you can take it, somewhere between just after midnight Friday night, which would be, early Saturday morning, until 11:59 p.m. 59 seconds on Sunday. So you have to get it done in that time period, anytime you want, but you have to do it in that time period. You have to use Respondus Lockdown Browser. You have to use a webcam. You have to follow the instructions on the Respondus Lockdown Browser, and you're going to be required to show me your work. Not only, like I said, when you use the webcam to show your place around you, as well as the documents you have on your paper, on your desktop, front and back. But when you're finished, you're then going to show the camera slowly and methodically the front and back of each page of work that you've already shown me. So I can compare both basically the beginning and the end. And that allows me to see all the work that you did did. So your work is supposed to be neat. Follow the instructions in the face-to-face test on how best to get partial credit for your showing your work. But I need you to show the work on that camera, and then within 15 minutes of turning the test in, you have to have photographs of each of those pages of work, front and back, uh, emailed to me as a PDF. Okay, it's got to be emailed to me within 15 minutes of you submitting the test. It's got to be in a PDF format, and it's got to be a photograph of the front and back of all the work pages, so I can actually compare them to the other two versions that we saw on the video camera. We see the blank version at the beginning of the blank version of the work pages at the beginning. Then we see the version of the work pages that you've done after you finish the test, and then I'm going to be able to compare that to the photos that you send me, and I'm also going to use it to grade. So make sure you do all that. All right. With that being said, let's go ahead and get started with the lab. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and show you this week's lab module. I haven't finished putting up the module for this week in general, but the lab module is up, so let me do that. So the lab module for this week is week 6 lab module, June 22nd to June 28th, and you see the lab is sequence 1, lab 8, nonlinear graphing 2. Here's the addendum for Lab 8, Nonlinear Graphing 2. That's the part that makes it able to be done at home. This is the time versus distance, and this is a terminal velocity videos. So these both show you how the lab was done, and usually they have some data in it as well. And then finally, here's where you turn it in. You'll notice right now it doesn't have the full description like it normally does, but I'll be putting that up in a second. Normally, it has a description of all the stuff you're supposed to do with your lab report. So make sure you follow those instructions once they're there, or just scroll back to the first lab, the second lab, third lab, or any of the previous labs, and that'll tell you explicitly the instructions on the lab. Not only that, you guys should really be taking into account all the stuff that I did on the first and second lab reports. I've graded those first and second lab reports, and your job was there to notice what you did wrong and then make sure you make corrections about the existing labs that you'd already turned in. Even if you've turned them in, as long as I haven't graded them, then you're still allowed to alter them, and I want you to alter them to make sure you don't make the same mistake over and over. I've got like some students that 3 labs in a row they didn't put their name on it on the lab properly, which on the front page is supposed to have your name, and you're supposed to say lab partners colon no lab partners or lab partners colon, and then list the names of the lab partners you had. Normally speaking, in this course, which is an online lab, you don't have lab partners, but you still have to write lab partners, no lab partners, and you are allowed to have lab partners. So by all means, definitely work with someone if you want. So that's one of the things that students the first week got 5 points off, and then the second week when they still did the same thing, they ended up getting 10 points off. The third week they might get 20 points off. So don't do that. Make sure you learn from the graded lab reports, and that's why I gave you a long period of time between the first lab and grading the second lab. I didn't mean to give you any long time between the second and the third, but I definitely am okay with it because it gives you more time to turn this in, and I was really hoping people would learn, but I just wanted to make sure I made this statement on a video for you guys to see beforehand. So let's get back to lab module for week 6, and here we are. So I'm going to go ahead and open the document so you can see what we're supposed to be working on. I edited out some of the wait time it took for that to load up. So, or that's my plan, is to edit out some of the wait time. So here it is, lab 8, nonlinear graphing. Normally you would use coffee filters, motion detector sensor, computer with Logger Pro, Lab Pro that interacts with the Logger Pro system, a meter stick, an air track, and 2 photo gates and a wood block. And in this, when they're talking to you about how one of the many ways we can deal with nonlinear graphs, you can just graph them and do a least squares fit for whatever functional value they have. You know, you might have some crazy variable like y that needs to be raised to the 3/2 power, and that's equal to some number times x raised to the 5/2 power plus b or something like that. You could actually just graph it like that, but often what we do is we try to say, let's assume it's linear, and we actually could plot the y versus x as if it makes a y equals mx plus b type equation. But you could also, like I said, just do it as, whatever variables they are and whatever powers they have. In this one, we're using mostly power systems. So we'll raise variables to various powers and then see which one makes a linear fit, as opposed to like this curve where someone's clearly overlaid a straight line, but you can see that it's clearly above it here, and below it down here, not because of randomness, like this one's below and this one's above and this one's above and this one's above and this one's below again. That's sort of random, whereas this one is a trend of one's above, a trend of one's below, a trend of one's above again. So that suggests that this is actually a curve shaped like this. So that's the kind of stuff you're wanting to look for. Obviously, if you don't have enough data points, you can't tell whether it really is a curve or not, but it should look more like this once you get the right exponents on the variables so that you can make it into a linear equation. As always, once you make it into a linear equation, whatever you raise the y variable to, that's going to be y, and then equals m times whatever you raise the x variable to, that's going to be x plus b. That's the way you make it linear. So that's one way. As I said, you can also do other ways, but this procedure is going to walk you through a couple different experiments. One versus time versus distance on an air track, and here's the normal procedure. Specifically, here's the intro, and then there's the procedure that would tell you how you go about doing the experiment. Of course, we're doing this at home, so we're not doing that part, but you need to know this. And then here's the analysis of that part where you put your data in and you write out the value of A1, which is the exponent that you found, made it linear, so on and so forth. And then there's a terminal velocity part. Again, here's the intro. This is some of the procedure to some extent, and then the rest of the procedure, and then we go into, as you can tell, the analysis. They didn't write it as three different sections: procedure, analysis, and that sort of stuff in this subsection. But that's it. That's the whole lab you're supposed to do. I'll go ahead and kill this, go back to the modules, and now I'm going to show you the addendum, which tells us how we go about making this lab a face-to-face, or excuse me, a home at home lab. So here we go again. Going down to week 6 lab module. There it is. So the addendum is this document. Again, if it takes too long, I'll try to edit it out in post-production. Yeah, it didn't take very long at all in this case. So in this case, you say, view the video to see how the data was gathered. You will complete the lab as indicated in the lab book, but using the data below. So now we have the time versus distance. There's your distance data. There's your time ones, time two, time three, the block height. So the key point here is this is data. And in some sense, you need to imagine this data as if it was typed in and it's in black font. So that's not okay. You can't leave that in black font. You've got to put that in the data table and then make that font some font other than black. Okay, you got to make it blue or red or green or whatever. Make sure it's not, such a high fluorescent color that it's hard to for an old person like me to read. Make sure it's also not a uh, it's not a color that's so close to black that I can't tell the difference. I really need to see the difference. Okay, and then here's the terminal velocity data, and this is filters. You're using coffee filters, sort of like umbrellas, if you will, and they're actually providing some air resistance, some more measurable air resistance, and you're going to do a plot, or you're going to analyze the velocity 3 times for each number of filters, and from that you can and actually I say, yeah, number of filters, and each case you get a velocity, and then you're going to take the average of that, and that's going to be the velocity you use for one filter. This will be the velocity you use for another filter once you take the average, so on and so forth. So that's the nonlinear graphing addendum for nonlinear graphing part 2. Now let's go back and show you what you're supposed to do. Now that you have that, of course, you've supposedly read the document. You then saw the addendum, and then you started analyzing the data, watched the videos that I gave you, stuff of that sort. Once you've gotten all that together, you're supposed to have all your data in the original Word file that I sent you, which or that I gave you, which is right here. So you have that Word file. Remember, anything you insert into it, if in a typed font, has to be some color other than black. Again, the whole purpose of this is for me to be able to immediately look at the lab document and see what you typed in versus what was already there. And the way I do that is either what you put in was either handwritten or photographed R was typed in with a font other than black. That's the way I know it. So it's got to be one. Everything you put in, it's got to be one of those three. So you got to make sure you do that. Then once you've inserted all that stuff and you've also done a sample calculation of each type of calculation you're supposed to do, and you've done all these things and inserted these things exactly where they're either required for you to do or where they tell you to do them, or in the analysis section when you have to do them, but it all has to be in that relevant section. And one person might not agree that it's exactly the same place that some other person would say, and that's okay. The main thing is as long as it is at a relevant place, not put all the way down at the end. It's actually in line with the lab, either right in the analysis section where you had to do it, or right in the analysis section where they told you to do it, or right in the procedure where you felt that you needed to do it. That would be acceptable as well. It's just got to be one of those spots. Same thing with the sample calculations. The lab manual might say you have to do this sample calculation and this sample calculation, and it'll say show your work. That's correct. You have to do all of those that say show your work. But not only that, if the lab manual doesn't mention a particular type of calculation that you did, then you have to show me that as well. So make sure you show me that calculation as well. And again, it needs to be right in either the analysis or the procedure section, right where it was asked to be done, right where you had to do it, or whatever. Okay. Now, once you've got all those sample calculations in, all the data in a font other than black, all the photos, all that stuff in place in the in the what was the lab manual document, then you save it. This time you save it with your name in the title of the file and something about the lab, so you could say lab 8 be younger or something like that. You save it as a Word document, and then you save it again, this time as a PDF, and that's what you submit right here where it says lab 8 nonlinear graphing. As I said, the instructions that are generic for each lab, they'll be right here, but this is where you'll turn it in. And you'll notice that I've already set the date to June 30th, and that's supposed to be June 30th by 11:59 p.m. But as you know, I intentionally, to some extent, behind on labs because I wanted to make sure everybody had plenty of time to make corrections for their first two labs. But in general, what happens is I grade labs in the order that I assign them. And when I grade them, if your lab report's there, I have not been taking points off as long as it's already there. If it's not there, then you're definitely going to get points off. So that gives you an automatic at least a day or two just about every time. So no one should be getting low grades for late lab reports. So make sure you turn this in on time and as instructed. And make sure also when I do give you lab comments with a lab, then that's normally you giving you the ability to look at past mistakes students made and make sure you don't make those mistakes. And not only that, when I return a lab that's been graded, that gives you an opportunity to learn from the mistakes you made so that you don't make it on future labs. That time it's really good for you to go back into some future labs that you've already turned in and make sure they don't have those errors. And as long as you get that done before I grade it, then I'm going to grade the latest version, which has those corrections, and therefore you'll make better grades. So hopefully that's clear to everyone. That's pretty much all I have to do for this lab. I was hoping some people might show up in case they had questions, but no one did, and that's okay. Again, you're not required to, but remember, this is always a session at 8 a.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays, unless I cancel it. It's always a session where you have a chance to do sort of like another office hour. So, for instance, you could ask me questions about lecture material or about the upcoming test. You could ask me, to help you solve certain problems from that test. Anyways, I hope that everybody was able to follow this lab and now can get it done. Let me know if you have any problems. As always, my text message is sort of the easiest, most fast way to get up with me, but you can email me too. But if you do email me, make sure you're only emailing me from your TCC account. This is all straight from the syllabus. Only email me from your TCC account. Only start the subject line of each email you send me with PHY241 online or OL or whichever one you choose from what the lab manual said, or excuse me, from what the syllabus said. And then make sure you, of course, include your first and last name in in the email as well. And you email that to me, which you know my email address. So have a good one, everybody. Sorry I didn't get to see anybody, but that's it. Have a nice day. Bye bye.